The world ended in a scream of metal and glass, in a heartbeat so violent it stole the air from her lungs and the certainty from her life. One moment, Eleanor Whitmore was the unstoppable CEO everyone feared and admired, sealed inside her armor of confidence and control, and the next, she was lying in a hospital bed with machines humming like strangers deciding her fate. The ceiling lights blurred above her, the smell of antiseptic burned her senses, and in that fragile space between pain and consciousness, Eleanor made a decision that would change everything. She kept her eyes closed. She pretended she was still unconscious. Not because she was weak, but because for the first time in her life, she wanted to hear the truth people hid from her power. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. Eleanor Whitmore had built her empire from nothing but ambition and discipline. As the youngest female CEO in her industry, she had learned early that softness was mistaken for weakness, that emotions were liabilities, and that trust was a currency too expensive to spend. Her days were a blur of boardrooms, private jets, and decisions that affected thousands, yet her nights were quiet and empty, echoing with the cost of success. She kept people at a distance, especially her assistant, Daniel Carter, a single father who never asked for favors, never stayed late without reason, and never complained when she treated him like a shadow rather than a person. To Eleanor, he was efficient, invisible, replaceable. To Daniel, she was his employer, demanding and distant, yet strangely lonely in a way he never spoke about. The accident happened on a rain-soaked evening when the city lights reflected like broken promises on the road. Eleanor had insisted on leaving late, pushing herself beyond exhaustion, ignoring the warning signs her body had whispered all day. The crash was sudden, brutal, and unforgiving. When she woke briefly in the ambulance, panic surged through her, not because of the pain, but because she felt powerless. At the hospital, as doctors stabilized her and machines monitored her fragile body, Eleanor realized something terrifying. For the first time, she could not command the room. She could not control the narrative. And so she closed her eyes again, choosing silence over strength, curiosity over control. Time passed differently while she lay there, pretending to be absent from her own life. Footsteps came and went, voices murmured in concern or obligation, and she sensed the difference immediately. Some visits felt rushed, heavy with duty rather than care. Others felt performative, filled with whispered anxieties about stock prices and leadership transitions. Each sound peeled back another layer of the world she had built, revealing how transactional her relationships truly were. Then, late one night, when the hallway lights dimmed and the hospital settled into a fragile quiet, a familiar presence entered the room, one that moved carefully, almost reverently, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. Daniel Carter sat beside her bed, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Eleanor could feel it, the weight he carried, the kind that did not come from work alone. He did not know she could hear him. He believed she was unreachable, suspended somewhere between life and recovery. And in that belief, something inside him broke open. He spoke not with the restraint of an employee, but with the raw honesty of a man who had lost too much to pretend anymore. He spoke about his daughter, about the nights he worked late so she could have a future, about the fear that one day she might grow up believing love was something you earned by being useful. He spoke about Eleanor, not as a CEO, but as a woman he had watched quietly suffer behind polished strength, a woman who reminded him painfully of himself. As Eleanor listened, her chest tightened in ways no injury could explain. Daniel spoke of respect, not fear. Of gratitude, not obligation. He spoke of how he admired her resilience but wished she would allow herself to be human. He spoke of how, despite her coldness, he never stopped believing there was kindness buried beneath her armor. He admitted that if she never woke up, he wanted her to know she mattered beyond her title, beyond her success, beyond the empire she built. His words were not dramatic, not poetic, but they were devastating in their sincerity. And in that moment, Eleanor realized something that shattered her carefully constructed world. She had been surrounded by people her entire life, yet she had never truly been seen. Days passed, and Eleanor continued her silence, not out of deception, but out of transformation. She replayed Daniel's words in her mind, feeling the weight of every truth she had ignored. She thought about the walls she had built, the relationships she had reduced to transactions, the love she had never allowed herself to receive. Recovery was slow, painful, and humbling. When she finally opened her eyes and allowed the world back in, she was not the same woman who had closed them. Her strength remained, but it was no longer sharp. It was softened by understanding, reshaped by gratitude. Eleanor's return to work months later was quiet, intentional, and deeply different. She listened more. She spoke less. She noticed the people she once overlooked. Daniel watched this transformation from a distance, unsure of his place in her evolving world, carrying the same humility he always had. Eleanor never mentioned what she had heard, never exposed his vulnerability, but her actions spoke louder than any confession. She created policies that valued family, supported single parents, and prioritized mental health. She trusted. She delegated. She connected. And in doing so, she rebuilt not just her company, but herself. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamic between Eleanor and Daniel. There was respect now, mutual and genuine, and an unspoken understanding that some truths did not need to be spoken aloud to be honored. Eleanor had learned that leadership without compassion was hollow, that success without connection was empty, and that sometimes, the most powerful moments in life happened when you stopped pretending to be strong and allowed yourself to feel. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you've overlooked or a second chance you've been afraid to take, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to support stories that heal and inspire. Before the story ends, take a moment to comment and tell us what part moved you the most or who this story reminded you of. Eleanor Whitmore never told anyone that she had pretended to be unconscious, but the truth lived quietly inside her, guiding her choices, shaping her future, and reminding her that sometimes, the most life-changing awakenings happen when we are brave enough to listen in silence.